Shabbat shalom, everybody. This is Rob Shmuel. Maybe I should go by Rashbi now that I'm wearing this. So this is another way that the sages wear their sudras. This is the way this Kabbalistic rabbi back in the 1600s used to wear it. His name was Baba Sali, and they wore it kind of like a hood. So I don't know. I don't know that I'm really into it, quite frankly. I just, I like it the other way. So. Yeah, I kind of like it this way better. The Rambam way. That's why Rashi, right? The turban and everything. It's Sudra, but it's kind of like a turban. Okay, so how is everybody doing? So I get political every now and then, and as some of you know, there's been a lot of primaries in our for our government recently, and there have been, yeah, you have this one contingent of one of the parties that has made it very clear they are not big fans of Israelis or Jews or Zionists or whatever you want to call us. But, a lot of them just aren't winning. So, yeah, a few of them are passing by. But the bottom line is that a lot of people that are pro-Israel are getting into play. So, what did God tell Abraham? I will bless those that bless you, and I will curse those that curse you. So, you have to watch out when you talk about what we call karma, which is measure for measure. You do to me, I'll do to you the same way you do to me. And God's made that very clear, that's the way it is. In fact, in the V'ahavta, the second paragraph, it starts out saying that. It's considered to be the paragraph of judgment, whereas the V'ahavta, which is the first paragraph, is considered to be the paragraph of mercy. So, with the paragraph of judgment, if you do everything that's required of you, then your grains will grow and the rain will come in its proper time to refresh the produce so that you will, have plenty. And if you don't, then it's like the tochacha, the warning. If you don't, then the ground will seize up and there won't be big produce and all that. So it's something that we need to be aware of, something that we need to consider. And ideally, even though it says that, um, you're not supposed to do things just because there's a reward. I mean, we do. Let's face it, we're human. And God's also said, look at Abraham. He prayed, for these people to regain their health. He prayed for these women, to be able to give birth. And as a reward for him praying for them, Sarah gave birth. That's our first reading in the Rosh Hashanah, which is coming up in, gosh, folks, almost a month. So that's kind of the way it is. So, but ideally, we kind of want to just do things because it's the right thing to do. That's where we head. Okay, so let's talk about this week's portion, a Shoftim. And again, this is Rashbi, Rob Shmuel ben Yehoshua, Rabbi Stephen Epstein, and here I am with my little turban. I've got my tzitzit on, so we're good to go. Okay, so Shoftim v'shotrim, judges and officers, you will make for yourself. Remember, this is Moses' discourse to Israel that is about to settle and go conquer and then settle. We've got to conquer first, the promised land. And he is giving them basically instructions, and a lot of these are kind of repeats of what he told their parents, back in like Exodus and Leviticus and some of Numbers. So, but these are the people that need specific instructions because when you go out, this is what you're going to do. So, one of the first things he said was, delegate, have officers of thousands, of hundreds, of 50, of tens, and now he's saying set up an equitable court system and make sure it's enforced. And there's instructions that follow that. Some of the instructions are that if you're going to try somebody for a capital case, capital involving death, then you need two witnesses. And these two witnesses need to verify and confirm that the offender was warned not to do it and then went ahead and did it anyway. And it's the same two people that saw them. And this is kind of in any case, really. But the capital cases, as we know, are very serious. Two, three is better. It says that, you need two witnesses. If you have three, that's even better. It also says that in cases where you do need those two witnesses to testify, if you then have another set of two witnesses that come forward and say, wait a minute, these people were with us and we were nowhere near the scene of the crime. Therefore, we don't understand how they're verifying for this person's guilt. Now you have a problem. Okay, what do you do? According to the Torah, you believe the second set of witnesses, and they're called zmanim, which is the word for time, because at that time they were not there. So this is something that's considered, that has to be considered. And what are the consequences of people that do this, that lie? I'm going to pause for a minute and let you think about it. Here's the answer. They get the punishment. That's right. If the punishment would have been death, guess what? For conspiring. So we take our laws real seriously. And this is the idea of divine justice. Again, we're Jews. We have to be better. We have to show people the way. Because you look at what's going on now, and I've said this before, and we don't like it. But it is what it is. Let the buyer beware. In Judaism, no such thing. No such thing. Okay, you don't have to be on your tippy toes. You just have to assume that people are going to do the right thing because we're acting on God's behalf. And if you don't do the right thing, in modern day, that can be the default. Right? Look at the way humans have behaved. The second generation of humankind, there was murder, right? Cain and Abel. And if you trace it all the way back into it, not only do you see an evolution of people organizing, but you see an evolution of laws. Okay. So, murder in the second generation of humankind. Then we had Noah. God had to wipe out humanity and start over again using Noah as the prototype, right? And then we have the seven Noahide laws. Then Abraham comes along and God says, go off and, explore go to a place where I'm going to show you, a place you have not known. I will bless those that bless you. I will curse those that curse you. Here we are. And we have the events that happened to our patriarchs. And then we have Moses and, well, seven Noahide commandments weren't enough. Now we need 613. And God had chosen Abraham and his descendants to lead the way because Abraham had it in his heart. Now think about it. There is a certain generational um, standard that's being created here. Okay, Abraham and Sarah, right? Abraham and Hagar had Ishmael, but he wasn't up to the task. So Abraham and Sarah had Isaac. Isaac and Rebekah had the two sons, but out of the two sons, Jacob's the one that prevailed with the ethics. And Jacob had the 12 tribes, and then they all went to Egypt, and we multiplied, and from 70 souls or something like 2.5 million. And then Moses came along, and he's like, now we have to create a just and equitable society. So now we created this thing called Judaism. The standards that we adhere to are not to be taken lightly. One of the commandments in this particular, one of the scenarios, I'll call it a scenario, in this particular parsha is the idea of kings. God says, if you want, establish a king, because you've got these 12 tribes. They're basically a loose confederacy. And even within the tribes, you have these clans that are sort of a loose confederacy. So we need somebody, some authority to bind them together, and that's going to be a king. Now, when we all think of kings, what do we think of? We think of a dictator, basically. Let's face it. A monarch is a dictator. They make the laws. They carry them out. You got to appease the king. It's all that. Judaism, not the case. Not the case. The king is the ultimate civil servant. The king has to write two Torahs and study them, one for the library and one for him. Now, I believe that the rabbis came along later and said, well, if you got enough Torahs in the library, you're good. Just write the one for yourself. And you learn through your fingers. I learned that in nursing school years ago. You sit in class, you take notes, and by taking the notes, you learn really good. And that's basically what the idea of the Torah is. And you're supposed to study Torah every single day, reading it, studying it, and of course, carrying out the edicts and the commandments and being the prime example. The king is not above the law. In fact, if anything, the king is below the law. The king has to um, comply with these commandments and be an example. You can't just go off and do what you want to do. I'm the king. And we had kings that tried to do that, and it was a complete and total disaster for them, which, of course, it should be, as it really kind of should be in politics today. Everybody's looking for loopholes. In Judaism, we don't do that. We carry out the law. The law is there for a purpose. It's not so you could outfigure it. Now, I know what you're going to tell me. Well, gosh, Rabbi, what about the Talmud? Yeah, I know that they put a fence around the Torah and they look for like loopholes, like you can't carry anything on Shabbat, but if you carry it like this, well, that's not the usual way to carry it, so that's okay. I don't buy that stuff. But anyway, that's the importance of justice, and that's the importance of our system, our heritage, giving people morality and ethics. Okay, Shabbat Shalom. As always, thank you for listening. And some people are really liking, maybe we'll see some more sutras walking around, huh? What do you think? Okay, Shabbat Shalom.